So, we're going through the Galatians, and we've gotten to Galatians chapter 3. Galatians chapter 3 and 4 are the most well-known portions of the book of Galatians. Kind of interesting. I've met some people on Facebook. I met some people in Kenya. And so let's just pretend I wrote this guy in Kenya a letter describing my life, what's going on with me, what's important to me. Just a 5 or 6 page letter, not a big deal. I mean, I can write a lot more than that. But say I just write a 5 or 6 page letter to this guy in Kenya. It's in Africa. Just regular size notebook paper. It's all right. So I write this guy a letter. Suppose he's kind of in a hurry, so he takes page 1 and 2 and he throws them out and he starts on page 3. How good a grasp is he going to get on what I'm talking about? So that's pretty much where we are with our understanding of Galatians in most cases. We start with chapter 3. Now, if you followed along with chapters 1 and 2, all the suggestions that are used to say that Torah is no longer valid for the believer, for the Gentile, we've completely blown every single one of those out of the water. Not a single one of them has merit. And so, when Paul comes to Galatians chapter 3, he's already laid a foundation. Okay, he's already set up what he's talking about. And so to come in and say, well, here it says that the law is no longer valid. Well, you just skipped him creating the pretext and setting the foundation for what he's talking about. So if you go back and understand and hear what he has to say and define what chapters 3 and 4 in the context that it's given, you'll find that it's not quite exactly saying that. It is saying something very, very important about the Torah, and we got into that a little bit last week about how we miss it when we grab the law. Okay, so verse 3 says, "Are you so foolish, having begun in the Spirit, that you're being made perfect by the flesh?" So remember what's going on. Their culture, their understanding of religion is they started with gods that are rocks and trees. Okay, and you go to your local priest or priestess and say, I want good crops this year, and he says, well, okay, according to where we are in this particular season, the God that you need to appeal to is this particular God. So you do this for this God, and then your crops will be fine. So it's just that's the relationship between the deities and the people. So, well, then you just didn't do enough job. If they were wrong, if it didn't work, it was your fault. It's not the priest's fault. It's not the God's fault. For some reason, it's you. Kind of like insurance. He says, "Have you suffered so many things in vain? If indeed it was in vain." The word "suffered" is actually the idea of being experienced. Have you experienced these things for nothing? Well, what is he experiencing? They're experiencing the manifestation of the Spirit of God in their lives. Okay. Take a look at Romans chapter 7, verse 14. We're going to be flipping back and forth between Romans 7 and 8 and Galatians 1. So keep your finger there. "For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am carnal, sold under sin." That's what Romans 7:14 says. So here's the problem. This is what's going on with Galatia. If you take a Volkswagen Bug and you put rocket fuel in it, what's going to happen? No, that was something different. Well, listen, rocket fuel, and we're not talking about a rocket, we're talking about rocket fuel, just putting rocket fuel in a Volkswagen engine. You're going to get nowhere fast in probably a whole lot of different directions. You're going to blow up. Yeah, well, you get ignition, you got spark, you got oxygen, you get spark, you get with rocket fuel there, you get boom. You get little piece of Volkswagen all over the place. Yeah. So, yeah, Mythbusters, don't try this one. So, this is what we're talking about. When you take that which is spiritual and try to apply it with something carnal, you get nowhere fast. And usually a big boom and a whole bunch of destruction, different directions. In fact, it's going to destroy you. This is what he's talking about. Trying to apply the spiritual nature of God's law through carnal or sensual or human understanding. Ephesians chapter 2, 1 through 13. I'll just read this through because I'm not really sure what it says. Where's Jane? She always gives me these cringing looks when I say stuff like that. And you he made alive, who were dead in trespasses and sins, in which you once walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit who now works in the sons of disobedience, among whom also we all once conducted ourselves in the lusts of our flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were at nature children of wrath, just as the others. But God, who is rich in mercy because of his great love which he has loved us, even when we were dead in trespasses, he made us alive together with Christ. By grace have you been saved, and raised us up together, and made us sit together in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus, that in the ages to come he might show the exceeding riches of his grace and his kindness toward us in Christ Jesus. For by grace have you been saved, through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God, not of works, lest anyone should boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. Therefore remember that you, once Gentiles in the flesh, who were called uncircumcision by what is called the circumcision made in the flesh by hands, that at the time you were without Christ, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel and strangers from the covenants of promise, having no hope and without God in the world. But now in Christ Jesus, you who were once afar off have been brought near by the blood of Christ. How did the Jewish people understand Torah? If the Torah is spiritually discerned, how did the Jewish people understand it before Christ? Okay. If the law without the Spirit is self-destruction, how did the Jewish people recognize Christ because they didn't have the Spirit? Trick question. Yeah, they did have the Spirit. Yeah. And so this whole idea of walking in the Spirit, or conversely quenching the Spirit, is a completely common understanding within Judaism. This whole idea of resting and walking in the Spirit and being obedient to the Spirit of God, or shutting the Spirit of God off and walking in your own way. That's a rabbinical concept. And that's exactly why you had the difference between Peter, who in Matthew 16 or 18, I think it's 16, says, where Messiah says to him, Spirit, flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but the Spirit of God. And can compare that to with Caiaphas and Annas and the members of the Sanhedrin, who shut off the Spirit of God because of their fear of Rome. So it's the same thing. This has always been going on. It just didn't suddenly pop up as new doctrine with or a new understanding of things with Acts and Paul's epistles. There's always been this relationship of, are we going to be obedient to God, listening to his leading through his word, or are we just going to do things our own way? It's the same story all the way back.